سورة الملك. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فتور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير. ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير. وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير. إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير. وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير. إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير. وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور. ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير. هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناقبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور. أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاسبا فستعلمون كيف نذير. ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير. أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبض ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير. أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور. أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم إن أمسك رزقه بل لجوا في عتو ونفور. أفمن يمشي مكبا على وجهه أهدى أمن يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم. قل هو الذي أنشأكم وجعلكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون. قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين. قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين. فلما رأوه زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون. قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم. قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين. قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتكم بماء معين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. سورة الفاتحة.
اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات. بانو کہاں تلاش کرے اپنے لال کو، جنگل میں مار ڈالا ہے زہرا کے آل کو، بانو کہاں تلاش. زینب کے ساتھ روتی ہے سب مل کے بیبیاں، جب دیکھتی تھی روز وہ وقت زوال کو، بانو کہاں تلاش. شبیر دل کو تھام کے غش کھا کے گر پڑے، دیکھا جو خون میں غرق نبی کے جمال کو، بانو کہاں تلاش. شبیر میرے پاس ہے صدقے کو بس یہی، جھولے سے لا کے دے دیا بانو نے لال کو، بانو کہاں تلاش. شبیر لا رہے میدان سے دیکھیے، اپنے ضعیف کاندھوں پہ 18 سال کو، بانو کہاں تلاش. بازار شام میں وہ اسیروں کا قافلہ عابد نہ بھول پائے کبھی اس خیال کو بانو کہاں تلاش لیلا دعائیں کرتی رہی بعد کربلا یا رب جدا نہ کرنا کسی ماں سے لال کو بانو کہاں تلاش کرے اپنے لال کو جنگل میں مار ڈالا ہے زہرا کے آل کو بانو کہاں تلاش اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات
بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللہ صلی اللہ آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب قتل ہوئے بے خطا موسی کاظم غریب تیرا برس قید تھے اور تھے بیمار بھی تھی نہ دوا بے غذا موسی کاظم غریب خرمے میں بے رحم نے زہر حلال دیا زہر سے مارا گیا موسی کاظم غریب آپ کے 40 تھے اہل عیال و یتیم لاش پہ کوئی نہ تھا मूसिए काज़िम गरीब, आई फलक से सदा, मूसिए काज़िम गरीब। रहमतुल्लाह अल फातिहा।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, respected elders, brothers, sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all the names listed on the screen and Kul Arwah al-Mu'mineen wal-Mu'minat, Sabab al-Fatiha. Ayat Ma Yujiban is requested for all the names listed on the screen and whoever is in need of it here and elsewhere. Let us all recite it together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Amman yujibul mudtarra idha da'ah wa yakshifu su. Amman yujibul mudtarra idha da'ah wa yakshifu su. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. As the CDC is updating their guidelines regarding vaccinated individuals, it is becoming more important that we know who all have been vaccinated. We would like to remind members to please fill out the form letting us know when you get vaccinated. The forms were available in the newsletter and also was sent out via WhatsApp. Now let us invite Sayyid to come forward to recite tonight's majlis by Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا والطبيب ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So for tonight, we'll start off by continuing our discussion, offering a tafsir, a sharh, and a commentary on the Dua of Rajab. And we'll spend a few moments as well towards the end speaking a little bit about the lifetime and some certain events and some points that maybe we can remind ourselves about regarding the life of our seventh holy Imam, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We had left off talking about when Allah is saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, قَالَ رَبُّكُمْ أُدْعُونِي فَأَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Make dua to me. Call me and I'll respond to you. We said that there's different ways and different levels of asking Allah. And sometimes we ask very clear things. Sometimes, they're, material, physical things. And sometimes we feel as what we're asking for is spiritually beneficial. It's religious in nature. It should be good for our soul. And we showed how sometimes that also may be spiritually immature, depending on what we're asking for. We may think that there's something that's beneficial for us. We may think it's khair for us, or our spouses, or our children, or our parents, or our extended families, or our community, or the ummah at large. But in reality, Allah knows what is khair and decides to do something different than what we ask for. So we said, how do we reconcile these ideas? We know that everything Allah does is khair. Okay, we get that. Everything Allah does is good. But then why is Allah saying that, ask me and I'll give it to you. Ask me and I respond to you. So how would we reconcile that? And last time we said that there's two ways mentioned in the Quran in terms of the way that Allah responds to us. One is istijaba and one is ijaba. What we've been talking about so far, udu'uni astajib lakum. Call me, make dua, and I will respond to you. This is istijab. This is one level. This is, the level of most of us when we make, again, that toddler, childish-like dua, that we ask for things and we think that they're going to be good for us. But in reality, Allah knows that, look, there's a real need behind what my servant is asking for. What this mu'min is asking for, or mu'minah is asking for, there's something beyond their words. Allah says, I look beyond their words. I go beyond that and I grant them what they actually need in reality. In the same way that a parent, when their child is crying or screaming or saying they don't want to sleep or they want to eat junk food or they want to watch more TV, whatever it is, a good parent knows that, look, what they're saying is not reflective of the inner reality and their inner hajat and needs. A good parent seeks beyond their words and says, look, right now I know you're doing this because you're tired, so I'm going to help put you to sleep. Even though you're going to fight it, I'm going to put you to sleep. A good parent says, I know you want to watch, you want more screen time, but right now I know it's better for you not to. You want attention, you want to play, we'll do that instead. A good parent knows that when a child is saying, I want candy, I want junk food, I want this and that, he says, look, you're hungry, that's what's going on. Let me give you real food, right? Because that's going to actually take care of your need. Istijaba, from that form and word that we understand, istijaba is from the pattern of istifaaal, is when you seek beyond somebody's literal, superficial meanings to find out what's going on behind the scenes. So Allah's using that form very specifically in the Quran, saying, I'm going to go behind, I'm going to seek what you are requesting, go beyond that and figure out what's your actual need. Now, this is in stark contrast to ijaba. And ijaba we see, and we mentioned this ayah last time. If you remember in our discussion when we first started it off, we said that there are only two ayat that we wanted to focus on that would basically spell out everything that we need to know in terms of dua and Allah responding and how we respond and how we ask Allah, all that. So we already mentioned one of them. So now this one over here, which we mentioned last time, and I wanted everybody to think about it, this is where Allah mentions ijaba. So if istijaba in the previous ayah is saying that, look, Allah is saying you're not asking for the right thing. You might ask for a bigger house, but what you're looking for maybe is comfort. You might be asking for more money, but what you're really looking for is better ways to budget. So Allah is looking beyond that and will take care of our actual need. So somebody could respond, okay, well, how do I actually ask for the right things? we said the starting point is to have that ma'rifatun nafs, self-knowledge. We said, okay, that's nice, but is there a way that Allah directly addresses this in the Quran, right? This idea of ijaba. And that's why we brought out the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, right? Surah 2, ayah 186, where Allah there says this famous ayah that most of us have heard and known and have memorized. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. So, again, this is being addressed to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And Allah is saying, look, when somebody asks you, when one of my abd, my ibad, when they ask you about me, when they ask you, Ya Muhammad, about me, Allah, then say what? فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Some mufassirin say, look, the context here, which many of us can understand, is this. These individuals, these Muslims of that time, or even right now, we are praying for things, we're asking things for Allah, we're trying to do the right things in our lives, doing all the wajibat, staying away from what's haram, but we don't get what we want. So it's very logical and reasonable for somebody to say to, hypothetically, like a kind of hyperbolic way to Rasulullah, like, where is this Allah you're talking about? Like, he's not answering my du'as. So almost like that, Allah is telling Rasulullah to respond to other people, the ones at that time, and then to us reading this as well, perhaps, that look, tell them, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. I'm actually close. Meaning, I'm hearing what you're saying. I know what your actual dua is. So then again, the question is, okay, well, Allah, if you're hearing it, then why is my dua not being responded to the way that I want? And this is where the next part comes in. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I respond, I give jawab, I answer to the da'wah of somebody who makes that dua, right? Da'wat al-da'i. Somebody who asks me for something, I respond to that when they make the dua. So again, we're like, okay, what's the difference between this and what we said before? The previous ayah. And that ayah, Allah said, "Ud'uni fastajib lakum." Make dua to me and I will do ijaba, istijaba. The difference over there was that was the perspective of an individual. Allah was addressing individuals who were offering spiritually immature du'as. Saying, look, if you call me, astajib lakum, I'm going to look beyond what you're actually saying. I'm going to look beyond your words. I'm going to respond to what you really need. Over here, Allah speaking, they say very literal here. Ujib. Ujib meaning I'm doing ijaba. I'm responding to what? Da'wat ad-dar'. Not just randomly responding to what your behind the scenes needs are and your desires are. I am going to respond to exactly what your dua is. Da'wat ad-dar'. The thing that you're asking for, I'm going to respond to that specifically. Whenever you ask. If you ask for something, if you're at this level, you're one of these ibad, you're an abd, a true slave, a true servant of Allah, then you are at the level where you are asking for something that I'm going to respond to right away. Because you know that this is something that's khair and beneficial for you. So if this is something good for you, then of course I'm going to respond to you. So the nature of this one is much different. Before, again, the previous ayah, Allah is saying, ask and I'll respond. Very generally. But we know from the tafsir, I'm going to look beyond what you're looking for and give you something that you may not have asked for. Over here, Allah is saying, look, when they're asking, when people like of that first level, the toddlers, right, the spiritually immature people are asking, where's Allah? Why isn't He responding? Allah is saying, look, tell them I'm close, but also add to them this, that I'm only going to truly respond to somebody's needs when they literally say it, if they are the ones who are qareeb to me too. If they know what they're asking for. If they have ma'rifat in what they're saying. If that's the level you have, if it's a spiritually mature dua, then I'll respond directly to your dua. Now again, our next point is, okay, well, how do we achieve that, right? That's our question. How do I go from getting Allah's istijaba, which is, I'm asking and it's the wrong thing, so Allah looks behind the scenes. How do I learn, what do I have to do to ask for the right things? How do I go beyond that? And in the very next part of the ayah, Allah is addressing that. He's saying, if you want that, فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. So if you want that, if you want to be able to make dua to me and I respond to your dua, your request specifically, the exact thing verbatim that you want, then the first thing you need to do is do istijaba of me. Allah is saying, you want me to respond to you, you need to answer me first. There's a whole bunch of things that Allah has been laying out in the Quran. Through Himself, through Rasulullah, through the Ahlul Bayt. All of these things have been laid out. Allah is saying, look, you really want me to answer you specifically? Then there's some prerequisites. First one is you need to start replying to what I said. I've been asking for you for a lot of different things. Simple things. Have you responded to those? Over here, فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. Allah is saying, you have to do istijaba of me. Meaning, whenever Allah makes a direct request, most of us will never be able to answer it very specifically. Outside of the Ahlul Bayt, no, we can't really do that. So then for us, we need to do this istijaba. Say, okay, Allah's asking for something, maybe there's something beyond the physical words that Allah is saying. Maybe there's something deeper beyond that. Maybe when Allah is saying, for example, right now there's all this a'ma, there's all this ziyarat, all these du'as to recite in these holy months, and all this fasting. Stay away from food and drink. Okay, that's the physical, literal, superficial stuff. Is there something beyond what Allah is saying? Right? Is there some deeper meaning that I need to get to? For fasting, we know, right? It's not just food and drink. We know that it's supposed to purify our soul. It's supposed to help pull us away from worldly, dunyawi attachments. So that's our istijaba back to Allah. Allah, I know that at the base level, you just want me to stay away from food and drink for a wajib fast or even a mustahab fast. But I'm doing istijaba. I know that there's something beyond that you want, that the Ahlul Bayt have mentioned, and I'm going to look and go after that. I know that there's all these du'as and a'mal and ziyarat and all these different things. You want us to recite all these mustahab, these recitations and things like that. Yes, if we recite the stuff, we read Quran every day, we recite these du'as like this Dua of Rajab, maybe we'll get those good boy, good girl points. That's fine. But Allah's saying istijaba. Look beyond that. Look at the actual words I'm saying to you. I'm giving to you in these du'as, in the ziyarat, in the a'mal, and see if you can manifest those actions. See if you can actually act upon those actions. When we're saying all these different things in the ayat of Quran, in this Dua of Rajab, remember, we're saying that this is a formula for you and I to figure out how do we change our relationship with Allah. Right? Ya man arjuhu li kulli khair wa amanu sakhatuhu 'inda kulli shar. Changing our idea to make sure that we're focusing that Allah is the source of all khair. No matter what we do in our life, even if He punishes us, it's good for us, right? That punishment in reality is not evil. It's a benefit for us. And all the other questions that we answered throughout the dua. We're building up all this context over time, right? To hopefully change it so that when we start reciting the dua and going beyond the words, we see, okay, there's something else that Allah is asking of me, and I'm going to respond to that. If I start looking beyond these words and acting upon what the du'as are really, that formula that they have, the secrets beyond the words, then that's the istijaba that Allah is saying. You have answered me, then you get the second part. وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي. Then your iman will increase in me as well. After you do this, then your iman will start to increase. You'll have more belief in the ideas that we've been giving you throughout Islam. And if that's all the case, what's the point of all this? لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. All of this is for what? So that perhaps there is some level of irshad. There is rushd, that hopefully you'll have increased, you'll have grown, and you'll have progressed in your spiritual journey. If you progress, now let's go in reverse with this ayah. If you want that growth, you want to blossom, you want your soul to rise, you want to get that qurbah and that closeness to Allah, where you're able to make du'as that He'll answer directly in the exact words and the exact things you're asking for, then iman needs to increase. You have to reply beyond the words of what Allah is saying. If that's the case, then Allah is saying, yes, that's when ujibu da'wata da'i idha da'ani. That's when I will respond directly to what you are asking me. So that's when somebody would be فَإِنِّي قَرِيب. That's when Allah is saying, that's when I'll be right next to you. Because once you have gone through that rushd, you've benefited yourself, you've risen to my level, then you are much close to my level of thinking, right? Hypothetically speaking, right? In terms of Allah. The things that I want from you, Allah is saying, if you get to that level, you're now thinking like me. You're seeing through my eyes. You see reality through my eyes. Then you'll understand the words that I want you to say. And that's when your du'as will be the du'as that I'll respond to you, because these are the things that I want you to say to me. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now the next line. Ya man yu'ti man lam yas'alhu wa man lam ya'rifhu tahannunan minhu wa rahmah. We talked about, again, this was a spiritually immature way before of reciting dua, right? Just asking for things, really not knowing what we're asking for. We're trying to build up to a level where hopefully we ask Allah in the way that He should be asked. We make the right dua. So that was a higher level, right? Now over here, it's a different level. Ya ma yu'ti man lam yas'alhu. Before, it's okay. We're calling to Allah saying, look, if you ask Allah saying you ask me, then I'll give it to you. So that was, again, that spiritually mature level. Now Allah is saying, well, there's another level too, of people who don't even ask me at all. And وَمَنْ لَمْ يَعْرِفْهُ, and they don't even recognize me. They have no ma'rifat of me whatsoever. Allah says, even them, I'll be a mu'ti. I'll give to them as well. Why? تَحَنُّنًا مِنْهُ وَرَحْمَةً. Out of my love, my mercy, my complete and utter devotion to my creation. That's why even if you don't address me directly, even if you don't call out to me, even if you don't recognize me, you can be the biggest atheist in the world, the biggest fasiq, the biggest enemy of Islam. Because of my love for you, I will still respond to your needs. You need to breathe, you need your circulatory system functioning, you need to exist. All of these basic functions, Allah will still provide to anybody, any creature, no matter what, out of His love and mercy. Think about, again, now let's go to the example. We talked about a toddler. Think about an infant. An infant who has absolutely no way of communicating with their parents. Just crying, right? They don't really recognize that, what the reality of their parents are. That they are the source of everything for them. They don't know an infant doesn't know what its needs are. A baby just cries and screams, having no idea what it's doing. So it's a complete dependence on Allah, or in this sense on their parents, and a complete inability to express what they actually need. So over here we say, look, a real loving parent obviously would reply and answer the requests and needs of their infant child. I mean, that's what, if they don't, then we say that's abusive parenting. Allah is saying that, look, if you as an infantile person, you don't ask me, you don't say anything, you don't recognize me, have no ma'rifah, no knowledge of me whatsoever, I'm still going to do istijab. I'm still going to respond to you. Even you and I. Maybe we get lucky where we make dua to Allah, if it's a dua that, again, is not worded the best way. If we've done that rushd and obeyed Allah, then maybe we get the ma'rifah and we ask for the things that we should be asking for. That's another higher level. But even if we are at that bottom level, where we have no idea, we don't recognize Allah at all, no ma'rifah, we don't look towards Allah, we just abandon the faith altogether. No matter who we are, Allah is saying, out of my tahannun, out of my rahmah, I'm going to respond to you regardless. And this is a way for us to remind ourselves in the month of Rajab, when these doors of mercy are open, that yes, a lot of us have been dealing with a lot of problems throughout our lives. We've had certain backgrounds where we grew up, maybe we came here from overseas. And maybe our Islamic education, the way that we've learned Islam, wasn't the strongest way. There's a lot of things that maybe over time we've learned that, I haven't been doing the best thing. I need to turn my life around. And sometimes that happens to an adult much later on in life, right? Where they get that spiritual awakening. Like, finally now I have ma'rifat of Allah. I've seen adults who, 50, 60 years old is when they finally recognize, there is God really has been connected to my life. He's always been behind the scenes, and now I need to make a change. And that's when they start to make that journey back towards Allah. So it's never too late. Yes, we all want people to do it in their youth. That's great if you can do that. But we have to remember, especially in the month of Rajab, that door is never closed. Even if we can do this on the moments on our deathbed right before we lose our life, if we can do this, then maybe we'll have saved our soul, and Allah will forgive us for all of our past sins and guna and mistakes that we have made. This is something that we can understand if we recognize that many of us may be on that infantile level. I want to mention just one, again, because I mentioned some parenting examples before. And for those of you who do have, whether they're infants or toddlers, this is a good point to remember as well. Imagine if Allah held us accountable like this. If Allah actually said, hey, you need to ask me for the exact right things, the specific things that I need you to ask, I want you to ask those verbatim. If you don't, then I'll never respond to you. Imagine that kind of God. How harsh our lives would be, because we wouldn't get anything, because most of us wouldn't be asking for the right things. A lot of, that seems very torturous. Like, I'm not at the level where I know exactly what I need in my life, if I'm being honest. And if Allah says, I'm only going to respond to somebody if they can use the exact words. If you don't use the words, then forget it, I won't respond to you. I mean, that's heartbreaking. That's a terrible sort of God, right? Na'udhu billah, that's not the Allah we have, but that seems like a very harsh God. So this is also a tip that we want to share with parents as well. And I've seen a lot of parents use this idea among their toddlers too, who begin to start speaking. When a toddler is in that area where they're frustrated, when they're emotionally overwhelmed, and they don't know how to regulate their emotions, because toddlers don't, obviously. I've seen a lot of parents use this thing, and they tell their child, use your words. Right? Where the child just may be screaming or yelling or running or doing something and hitting. They'll stop and say, no, you need to use your words. Tell me exactly what you want and what you need and how you feel. That's the only way I'm going to take care of you. You see, the example that we're getting here, perhaps in this dua, is look, A real, loving, merciful individual, parent, that's trying to manifest these loving qualities from Allah is not going to expect something like this from a child, nor an adult as well. What do we have from the Ahlul Bayt? Even when somebody wrongs us, a family member or a community member, they do dhulm to us, right? They oppress us, they harm us, either physically, emotionally, spiritually. We're told by the Ma'asumeen, make up an excuse for them. Make up a reason to forgive them, even if they don't say anything to you. Some of us, we get in the position, well, he didn't say sorry yet. And until he says sorry, I can't forgive him. But the Ahlul Bayt have said, look, if somebody doesn't apologize, no problem. Your akhlaq needs to be better than them, and you need to make one up for them. As good parents as well, when our children, especially toddlers, but even some of us as adults, when have we ever learned how to regulate our emotions? When did we ever have a class? I never had that when I was growing up. They don't teach us this in school. All we learn to do is just, if you get angry, just be angry. If you're mad, get mad and scream. Nobody tells us, okay, there are calming techniques and how to actually figure out what your, real emotional state is. Most of us don't know this stuff. This is something that now they start to teach in, kind of psychology and things like that. And this is really good for parents to figure out. And the only way to do that is if you and I, as parents, learn how to do it for ourselves. When we get overwhelmed with our kids, we need to say, look, I'm feeling very overwhelmed right now. So I don't want to say something that I'm going to regret. I don't want to get mad at you and say something. I'm a little disappointed, so I don't want to say anything right now. I'm going to take up my own little time out, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about it. That's an adult way, a mature way of responding. Not screaming or yelling at our children like this. Nor is it saying that you, little child, who has no mental, cognitive, emotional aptitude whatsoever, I need you to use words. Right now when you're freaking out emotionally, find the words and tell me what it is. This is not what Allah expects of us, nor should a loving parent expect the same thing for their children as well. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Inshallah, we'll continue with the rest of the dua tomorrow night. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So a few words and examples from the life of our seventh Imam, alayhi salam. Whenever we talk about the Ahlul Bayt, obviously we refer to their history because, obviously we love them, we like to hear the stories. That's nice. And, there's blessings when we have the dhikr of Ahlul Bayt. That's great. But those of us who, again, are looking beyond the words and beyond the stories, beyond, physical history, we want some sort of lesson. We want something to grab from their history to say, okay, what's an example for me? What's a way that I can improve my life? Give me something from the life of any of the Ahlul Bayt where I can say, oh, the Imam did that or the companions did that, so now I can improve my life because I saw an example in their lives. Hopefully that's what we're looking for. Again, not just story time. What happens, unfortunately, a lot of the times is that people will have maybe 1, 2, or a handful of examples from certain members of the Ahlul Bayt, certain Imams. They take that idea, they form an opinion around that idea, and that becomes the basis for all the decisions that they make throughout their lives. So, as an example, they'll say, look, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he rose up. Since he rose up, now every single bad thing that happens, every oppressor that's there, we have to all rise up against them. And I've heard some people say this. Look, that's one ma'asum. We have 13 other ma'asumeen that you have to look at. You can't just grab one Imam out of context and then take an example like that. That's not how it works. Some will, again, take the other extreme. They say, look, Imam Ali alayhi salam, even though he was around zalimeen and oppressors and his right of khilafah was stolen from him, with the 3 khulafa, he still worked with them. He still advised them. So people will take that example and say, see, we can work with oppressors. We can work, for an oppressive system. There's no problem. Again, that's one Imam. Why are you completely discounting all the other ma'asumeen? When we want to really get an understanding, we can't just cherry pick evidence here and there. Unfortunately, the problem is that even many of our ulama, and I'm using that term loosely, speakers, they will themselves, because they don't really have that in-depth research as well, they will also only cherry pick a few examples and then provide and present that on the minbar. And then naturally, if you and I are hearing that, we're going to take the examples because we trust the person on the minbar, and then we're going to use that and we're going to run with that. Unfortunately, and again, maybe those speakers have good intentions, fine. But they're not giving the full picture. And this same thing has occurred with the example of our seventh Imam as well. How so? Think about this idea of political activism. I just gave you the example from the first and the third Imam. Many people, especially right now, when it comes to being politically active as a Shia, working and taking positions with governments, they will specifically hone in on examples from the seventh Imam. The famous one is from the the famous companion of the seventh Imam, known as Ali ibn Yaqtin. They take this example, say, look, he was told by the Imam to work within the government of Harun, right? He was allowed to work in the government of Harun. So, and with the condition that he would be able to help the Shia. So right there, somebody just gives you that piece of the story, which I'm sure many of you have heard. Ali ibn Yaqtin worked for the government. The Imam allowed him to, and he said, you just have to, help out Shias and it's fine. So they give you that little snippet of history, and they say, see, all the people who say you can't work for the government or don't get active and all this, they're going against the example of the Imam and this companion. Now, if that was the only part of the story, then maybe it would make sense, maybe. But the problem is they've completely they've missed the story altogether. And they've missed that there's many other companions, and there's other parts too. And some of you have heard of other companions and the other famous stories. So for example, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Safwan al-Jamal. Yeah? Safwan al-Jamal, right? The one who rented out camels. And specifically, he was known to rent out camels for those who needed to go for Hajj. And he was another great companion of both the sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, alayhi salatu wasalam, as well as the seventh Imam. So one day, he had went and visited the seventh Imam. And the seventh Imam says to him, he said, Safwan, everything about you is good. Everything about you, except for one thing. And of course, imagine you, a person who claims to be a Shia, a lover of the Ahlul Bayt, you hear your Imam saying something like this. There's one thing that's wrong about me, please tell me, I need to fix it, right? So he says, lakal fida, right? May I be a ransom? What is it? What did I do wrong? He said, your issue, your problem, is that you rent out camels to Harun. So now Safwan's a little confused, right? As many of us may be as well, if we were in the same position. He says, okay, look, ya ibn Rasulullah, I don't do this because I'm greedy for money. It's not like I need the money, that's why I'm doing it. It's not greed. And I'm also not doing that because I'm a fool. Right? I know exactly who he is. I know that he's an oppressor and all this. But then he tries to give his justification. He says, look, I'm only renting my camels because he uses it for Hajj. Right? It's an ibadah. Why shouldn't I help him do an ibadah, right? A wajib, ritual, or a mustahab ritual if he's already done it. For us that would make sense. That's reasonable. Why wouldn't I help somebody? I hear this from kids all the time. You know how sometimes it seems like it's cultural, although I haven't done full research, but for our janamaz, right, musalla, I've been told, never leave it open, always make sure you fold the corner. Right? Or at least fold it up and put it away. What's the reason? Because otherwise who's going to come and pray? Shaitan. Right? So the response that usually kids will have is don't we want shaitan to pray though? Why is that a bad thing? That's the thing we said. Maybe if you praise to Allah, then Allah will forgive him, and then we'll be fine in this world now, and he'll be off, and everything will be nice. The story will come to a happy ending. So it's very strange reasoning. So think about the perspective of Safwan. Why wouldn't you want this oppressor to go to Hajj? Maybe that'll help him out. So this is what his thinking is. And then he adds, he said, look, I don't even go with Safwan. I don't even get involved in the transaction. I send one of my servants to do it. So I'm not even a part of it, right? So then the Imam says, okay, now let's go beyond, the scenes here. He asks Safwan, he's like, Safwan, does he owe you money for this? So the Imam, Safwan's like, yeah, of course he does, yeah. He says, okay, do you want him to live long enough, meaning that he goes for Hajj and comes back, so that he can pay his debt off to you? Safwan's like, yeah, of course. That's what every person wants, right? They want them to live long enough so they can have their debts repaid. He says, well, if a person wants them to live, meaning a zalim, an oppressor, then he is one of them. Right? The principle is this. If you want a zalim to continue to live because of some benefit that you may be getting from them, that you perceive from them, then the Imam here is saying that you are one of them. You become a zalim as well. And Imam continues, and a person who is one of them, meaning an enemy of Allah, a zalim, will definitely end up in hellfire. So now, and I'm sure many of you have heard this before, right? And it's interesting because after this fact, Safwan shut down his business altogether. He said, I can't do this anymore. Harun actually came to him. He said, why'd you shut down your business? And Safwan, being a intelligent Shia, at least, did not give the Imam as an excuse because he knew that would get the Imam in trouble. So he said, look, I'm old, I'm senile, I can't manage my workers anymore, my servants, so, whatever. Harun was smarter, though. He said, I know that it's because of Musa ibn Ja'far that you're doing this. If I didn't like you so much, because they actually were, I guess, close enough, Harun says to Safwan, if I didn't like you this much, I would have killed you right away for this. So Safwan got very, very lucky here. Now let's go back here. We've got two different stories. Safwan is being told, do not have any sort of association and do not have any hopes that a Vadim continues his life. On the other side, we see Ali ibn Yaqtin being told, yeah, work for the government as long as you can help Shias. And usually, the version that we hear more so, as far as I've heard, especially here, like in North America and like Western-speaking countries, is the Ali ibn Yaqtin one. That see, the Imam said you can work for oppressors. There's nothing wrong with it. You can work for oppressive governments. What's wrong with that? Ali ibn Yaqtin did it. What they don't mention is the rest of the story. Number one, they don't like to bring in the idea of Safwan. And the other is that this was the norm among the Shias. There are many other companions who already knew that they should have nothing to do with Harun, nothing to do with any of the Abbasids at all. Never work with them, never talk about them, never say anything about them. This was a norm among the Ahlul Bayt and the followers of the Ahlul Bayt at that time. So everybody else knew this. And you can look, there's other companions like Ziyad ibn Salama, who was also, because he started to get a little close to the Abbasids, the Imam had to come to him and say, look, everybody knows, all the Shias know you're not supposed to do this, so you need to back off and not do this. So now, again, we might ask, well, what about Ali ibn Yaqtin then? Say, look, he was an exception. And in fact, the point that many scholars leave off, and they don't mention about the whole story, because you need, again, full context, not a soundbite of history, is this. Ali ibn Yaqtin was, when he was asked by Harun to be a part of the government, what was the first thing he did? Did he say yes? No, he didn't accept the position. The first thing that he did is he went to his Imam. He went to see Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He went and complained to the Imam. He said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, this oppressor, this zalim is asking and trying to demand me to work for his government. I know I'm not allowed to do that. So I need you to give me the permission so that I can reject this and help me out of this situation. The Imam said, no, you are one of our better Shias, the best of our mu'mineen. You need to stay in there. And these are the conditions. I will guarantee your safety. I'll guarantee that he'll never find out who you are as long as you stick to what I'm saying. You see, this little nuance makes the situation much different. The previous edited, small excerpt version is, yes, Ali ibn Yaqtin just went off on his own and the Imam said, yeah, good job, nice doing that. In reality, history says Ali ibn Yaqtin knew that he wasn't supposed to do it. The first thing he did is went to get ijazah from his Imam. The Imam is the one who forced him into that position. And of course, Ali ibn Yaqtin didn't reject, of course, what his Imam said. And he helped him along the way. I mean, you know the story about how he helped him in taqiyya with wudu and these other stories that exist, which I don't have time to go into. But all along the way, the Imam was backing him up and protecting him all throughout this. So here we see this. Many individuals now want to say, we need to be active in politics and get involved in the media and all this stuff. Say, look, okay, that's great if you want to do that on your own. But have you actually consulted the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt? Or are you making these decisions on your own? Are you actually going to the Imam of your time or the ulama of your time and seeking permission and finding out, is this the wisest thing for me to do right now? Am I actually qualified? Or is it that, I just happen to be a token Muslim by name? Everything I stand for happens to be anti-Islamic, but whatever, I'm a Muslim and sometimes I decide to wear a hijab, sometimes not. Sometimes I'll, mention Allah, sometimes not. Sometimes the things that I support, right, in government will be clearly anti-Islamic stances, whatever, who cares? As long as I'm a token Muslim, what does it matter? And of course, we get proud of that too. I don't know why. Look, there's a Muslim out there. But what about him makes him a Muslim though? Or her a Muslimah? There's no Islamic ideals that exist within them. Why would we support these individuals? If we know that as followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we have standards. The best of the best, the ones who were the most muttaqi were the ones who were sent by the Imams. Not just any random individual. Not just any person who would fall prey to the zalimeen, to being bribed by the oppressors and things like that. But what we see many times is what happens is people, they say, they end up going into these sessions with other politicians, they end up drinking and dancing and doing all these things. It's like, it's just part of politics, you have to do that. Okay, if you think you have to do that, fine. But a true follower of the Ahlul Bayt, one who would go to his Imam first, would never get engaged in this type of action. So again, the point here is that if we want to really follow the examples of the Ahlul Bayt, then we can't just cherry pick little examples from history. We need to get a fuller picture. If we're going to make a decision, we need to see all the different ma'asumeen. Let's collect all the different ideas that have happened. What is the most appropriate thing for our age right now? It's not a simple black and white answer where it's don't ever work with the government or also definitely work for the government. Or get involved in media, don't get involved in media. Do this and that. Things are not that simple. Analyzing history is a very, very difficult thing. So if ever you hear somebody, whether it's another individual in a WhatsApp group or whatever, or online and some social media group, debating, or in baraza, or even from the mimbar, if they're just giving you these kind of one-off answers, again, one little snippet, you could ask them, have you actually looked at all the history? Do you know if there's contradictory examples here? Have you done a proper analysis? If they haven't, which the majority of us haven't done that, then maybe the most we should say is, look, maybe this is the idea, maybe that's the case, but we should probably do more research and ask qualified ulama. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When we talk about the oppression that the Ahlul Bayt had faced in their lives, usually when we think of dhulm, the abuse, the torture that the Ahlul Bayt had faced, what comes to our minds? We think of the Umayyads, we think of the Abbasids, they poisoned the Imam, they assassinated the Imam, they did this, the Khawarij. We think about these open enemies. If we take a look in history though, we'll see a lot, not a majority, but a good amount of the times, unfortunately, it was the followers, the self-proclaimed Shias and followers of the Ahlul Bayt who were the most abusive of the Imams. Because of their own actions, they led the Imams to being assassinated, being poisoned, being found out. Why do we have this principle, especially by the seventh Imam, of taqiyya? Some people wrongly accuse us that, we just go around lying. No, don't abuse us like this. This idea was because the Imam saw that we needed to protect ourselves and save our lives and save Islam, save walaya and imama. But unfortunately, which is something that still happens to this day, some people do not have the wisdom to know when it's appropriate to speak and when it's better to keep their mouth shut. And what we see even in the time of the seventh Imam, because of individuals revealing the secrets, speaking too openly about the Imam, this is what ultimately perhaps led to his demise as well. In the history of all of the A'imma, of course all of their masa'ib and musibats are very, very difficult. But there are certain individuals whose musibah and masa'ib, especially their janazah, is extra difficult for us to process and think about. Alhamdulillah, many of the A'imma alayhimus salam, they were there, right? They were able to recite the wasiyah with their children present. They were able to mention and say that this is the next Imam after me. And everybody was witness to this. But then you have certain Imams, like Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who's left all alone in the heat on the sands of Karbala. We have Imams like Imam al-Kadhim, who's constantly pulled away from his family, year after year, from Medina pulled back to Baghdad, by 4 different khulafa of the Abbasids, 4 different zalimeen, taking him away from his family constantly. Can you imagine as a person being pulled away over and over again? Even right now, if the government wants to harass somebody, FBI or CIA or Homeland, they at least come to us. They come to your door. But over here, these zalimeen would grab the Imam from his house and pull him away every single time and keep him away from his family. Sometimes for years he'd be away from his family. And at the end of his life, he's been away from his family. He's in prison. He's kept away from his Shias. Towards the end of his life, one of his close followers comes and visits him while he's in prison. And when he comes and he asks the Imam, Ya ibn Rasulullah, what is your status? What is your hal right now? How are you doing? The Imam, because the prison guards are watching him, wants to let him know without being very open. He shows him his hand, he opens his hand, and the person says, Ya Allah, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, what's happened to you? Your hand is completely pale and white. It's as if no blood is flowing through anymore. What's going on? He says, they have given me dates. They've given me 9 or 10 dates, all filled with poison. The effect of the poison has such on my body that it's like my body has ceased to function. In the same way, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, his body turned green because of the poison. Imam al-Kadhim, the blood began to stop circulating in his body, and he was in extreme pain. And they asked, Ya Rasulullah, what can we do for you? What can I do? He said, there's nothing. In 3 days' time, I will have left this world, and you will have to deal with my burial rites after this. Now imagine, in one part, in Baghdad, you have the Imam being poisoned, dealing with this 3 days all by himself, in this harsh prison, in this dungeon, in the darkness, being cut off from his Shia, cut off from his family. They say, according to some narrations, that even when the poison was still coursing through his veins, they wanted to expedite his death. So they say they laid the Imam down. He barely had the strength to get up. They took a carpet. They wrapped the Imam in the carpet. They took various soldiers and prisoners, and they made them sit on the body of the Imam till he suffocated. They say it was the mix of suffocation and poison which ended the Imam's life. They took out this carpet. They had to pay 4 or 5 individuals to carry this carpet, the janazah of the Imam, through the streets and throw his body on the bridge of Baghdad. And as they were going, this person that was paid by the Abbasids was said, this is the Imam of the Rawafid. You see, you said he would live forever. Look at your dead Imam right now. And the Shias would come out and would be crying and saying, this is the status of our Imam. This is how he's been treated. This is what's going on in Baghdad. When we go and move a couple 100 miles away, we see that there's a young girl in Medina, Fatima al-Ma'asuma, who's crying and been waiting year after year saying, Baba, when are you going to come back? And then one day, her brother comes to her. Imam al-Rida comes to her and says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. She says, why are you saying this to me, akhi? Bhaiya, why are you saying this to me? He says, because our father has passed away in Baghdad. He says, how do you know this? How did you come to know this? No messenger has come to our house. He says, it's because on that time when it happened, the same way Allah has made me an Imam, I was taken to that place instantaneously. I performed his janazah in front of everybody. I was designated as the Imam, and now I have to come and relay that information to you. And this is where they say the cries in the house of the Ahlul Bayt had, went. And perhaps this is where Bibi Masuma cried and said, this is not fair for a young daughter to be away from her father for so long and not to be with him at his time of death. We would say to Bibi Masuma, is this worse? Or is it worse for Bibi Sakina to be with her father in her last moments, to be looking directly on the plains of Karbala and to see her father's head moving from place to place, to see that Sakina, when she's buried, she's also shackled in her place. She's also buried like the Imam in a prison as well. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد.
शहीद हो गए गमखार मूसा काज़िम 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 गरीब बेकसो लाचार मूसा काज़िम शहीद हो गए गमखार मूसा काज़िम शहीद हो गए गमखार मूसा वतन से दूर शहादत मिली है वावेला वतन وطن سے دور شہادت ملی ہے واویلا، کوئی نہیں ہے عزادار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم، اٹھانے آئے جنازہ بھی آپ کا مزدور، اٹھانے آئے جنازہ بھی آپ کا مزدور، تھے چاروں سمت ستمگار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم، سلام تجھ پہ غریبوں کا پلے بغداد، سلام تجھ پہ غریبوں کا پلے بغداد، تھے چاروں سمت ستمگار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم، سلام تجھ پہ غریبوں کا پلے بغداد، سلام تجھ پہ غریبوں کا پلے بغداد، ہے تجھ پہ سات و سردار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم، ظفر سجا کے غریبو دایار کا تابوت، ظفر سجا کے غریبو دایار کا تابوت، اٹھا رہے ہیں عزادار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم۔ سورۃ الفاتحہ۔
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن السيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس وعنيس النفوس أيها المدفون بأرض توس، الرضا المرتضى الرازي بالقدر والقضاء مولانا علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفينا وشفي والدينا في يوم الجزاء، وفقنا الله لزيارتك يا مولا، ورزقنا الله شفاعتك في الدنيا والآخرة. السلام عليك وعلى أختك فاطمة المعصومة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته.